just a sec. I gotta go live. I gotta find Anchor. We gotta be ready to record. They can hear me. Are we live yet? All the things. What was this about? Oh, dreading. Here we go. I don't know why I always go silent when I do that. Okay. Here we go. Hey, welcome to the Death of a Dream podcast. This is where dreams come true. Don't believe me? Okay. You don't have to. Okay, you have to. It's going to happen, right? Dreams are going to come true. So we're going to go ahead and dive in with our great thing. Why? Why great things, Hannah? You've gone a little crazy, right? And even to structure the show this way, because here's the thing. A woman who's seemingly confident, getting on her own platform of which she has created, and speaking of herself highly on a regular basis is something that this world is kind of built to stigmatize and say, whoa, sister, back it up. But here's the thing. I am walking this line for you and with you, and my example sets the example that I want you to start doing. So, yeah, that's how we start the show. Yup, I go ahead, I shout myself out because you know what? If I don't do it some days, nobody does. And that chips away at my confidence, thus chips away at my ability to continue to show up, to do this work, to bring you great content, to feel confident enough to get great guests on our show, to feel confident enough to take the next step so that I can start forging this path for all of us, so that I can start representing in this venue for all of us, with all of us. So, that's how we start the show, people, and we'll continue. And if this deeply offends and afflicts you, then I ask you to not listen or to keep listening, because at some point we're going to break that down and it will stop hurting your feelings and you'll start feeling excited about doing that work and excited about bringing this into your life. Your greatness is such a vital part of you championing the life that you want. It just is. And I know that that's the exact opposite of what we've been told as women, as just whole people in this space, right? That's what we're told. We're supposed to just be okay with being okay, and I want greatness for you. And the beauty of that is that it looks different for everyone, and greatness as a daily pursuit looks drastically different. So let's be great. My great thing from this weekend, oh my gosh, right? We've been on a little bit of a food journey, and by a little bit, I mean we are challenging the way that we've been asked to show up in this society. And so if you haven't listened to my episode with Mia a couple of weeks ago talking about diet culture and the shame model that has been produced, listen to it. And then go ahead and change every aspect of your life and the way that you relate to food. And I understand that this is not something that afflicted everyone the way that it did me, but here I am telling you, my great thing from this weekend was having a granola bar for my daughter, who, here's the thing. In all aspects of the world, I would love to tell you that I am super mom, that I set out on this journey and showed up in the best light of momming that ever could possibly happen. And trust, if you go to my Instagram, it would tell you that I am. This is why the podcast exists, right? Can we please not just be that? Because yeah, it is, right? It's supposed to be all the pictures that you capture. It's supposed to be all of the great moments. So you're not taking the picture of the 12 bowls of cereal that are sitting at your kitchen table because it's Thursday, because it's been a long week, because I don't know, I just can't get it together enough to pick up those damn bowls of cereal when I get home, because the last thing I want to do is clean up this kitchen for the 12th time this week. Can we just not do cleaning kitchens? Does it have to be this way? Okay. So I'm not exactly what most would call this like doting perfection of a mother. And I don't try to be either, because it's impossible for me. Like, I know a lot of super moms, and that is not a status that I am ever going to reach. But what I can reach is my own greatness when it comes to momming. So my own greatness looks like having the kid who has their jersey on, who is like on time for things. As a child who constantly like I was the third kid. No third kid is winning anything, right? Like, they get the hand-me-downs, they lose the jerseys in the laundry, their jersey's never clean, it's always wrinkly. Like, that was me. They're always late because they were just running someone to tuba practice, and then they were running someone to soccer practice, and since you're the youngest, it probably doesn't really matter anyway, so you're gonna go late to soccer. It's okay. And we'd never have the picture form, and like, I was the hot mess kid. And all the mothers who were like first-time mothers, they were like single parents. They had one kid, or their kid that was in my grade was a first child. They like adopted me. They were like, oh, let us help. Do you need help? Right? So like, that was my life. So as I'm constructing how I want to show up as a parent, as I'm constructing like what I want to be, because it's up to me, right? How I show up, how I parent my kids, I'm like constructing that I just want them to be on time. And I don't want them to be impacted by my rushing, by me not managing their life appropriately. And I understand that's sometimes impossible. And so as I'm just fumbling, like, no, I have to be the mom who brings the jersey. Like, she has to have her jersey. This is the level I set, and that's not even an extremely high bar. Like, I just want her to be on time for pictures and have the right jersey on. These are my goals. Hanna, that's not even that hard to do. Why can't you get this together? And then there's like this new added layer of guilt where it's like, Hanna, you're at home all day long. You had stuff better together when you worked full time. Like, really? Now the bar, I mean, does there even need to be a bar? You should be knocking all this out of the park. So then I'm just adding on layers of guilt as I sort through everything of laundry. And it's like, why do you even have baskets of laundry? Like, put the laundry away. What are you doing? So you can imagine, right? Like, at some point, we're getting more hectic as we get closer and closer to the deadline. And I'm like, your hair's not even brushed. Oh my gosh, you still have face paint on from hunting? Like, what? What are we doing? Hanna, really? So I'm like, we're getting close to where we're about to be late, right? And then I'm like, she has a football game and we haven't even eaten yet. Is it, like, what, right? And so in normal structures, the madness would have been sky high because I don't allow foods that I can't prepare, that aren't whole foods, right? And so as I made this shift with Mia, and I'm still continuing my work in this space, I'm reading Anti-Diet right now by Christy Harrison, which was a book that Mia recommended. I'm still welcoming in this space, but I think more than anything, I had never acknowledged that food is not only a mental need, it's also like a physical need. So it's not just like, oh, Hanna, you have to have just foods that nourish your body in just this one way, that only nourish it. Like, on the mental side of that, right? I'm guilt shaming, like mom shaming to the highest degree at this point by like 8 a.m. Saturday morning. You would not believe the layers that I had been piling on myself of like why I'm inadequate, of why I don't even deserve to have kids at this point. Like, Trust. It was building. The fury, the madness, the self-hate in this moment. And so I finally find the jersey. Finally find it. Praise. I quickly fill out the picture form, and then I'm like, shoot, you haven't eaten yet. This is a problem, right? And 3 weeks ago, haven't eaten would have just been like, okay, you're not going to eat. Hopefully you can sustain just like pure adrenaline, okay? Maybe see what you can do. And instead of that, like I had in my pantry some go-to options for this extreme instance of my life, right? And I've never had that before. And it was just so freeing to be like, okay, we have a couple of things. Let's grab those. This isn't the greatest instance. This isn't what I would envision for our Saturday morning, but this is where we are. This is the reality of our life right now. Sometimes it's too crazy to sit down. Sometimes that just isn't an option. And so it's important that I have foods that cater to both instances, right? Because mentally, food was so heavy for me, right? It always required a lot of work and time, and I don't always have those two things, right? And so that's my great thing. Like I had food on hand that I needed for that moment, and that was so freeing to just hand my kid a bar and be completely okay with it. Like, this is where we're at, and this is so much better than not feeding them anything at all, right? Thank goodness for the people doing this work, because the layers of self-hate related to diet culture are so heavy and so high, right? Like, and so demeaning and diminishing and life-sucking. Like, mentally, the strain that this has put on my life for longer than I even like to think about is crazy. So that's my great thing. Go ahead, take time for yourself, recognize yourself for your great thing. Like, what do you feel great about? What have you accomplished that you feel amazing about, that you can completely own? Like, I had granola bars, so the bar for greatness really isn't that crazy, but like, what do you actually feel great about in your day-to-day? What do you feel great about? Shout it out to someone, to yourself, on your commute, listening to this podcast, write it down, do it. It is transformative. I've seen it impact groups of women like I've never seen before, and it really isn't all that hard. So do it, take time. So today we're talking about like, hey, it's Monday, good people. And I don't like to date these podcasts or really like structure them in time and say, hey, it's Monday. Hey, it's Tuesday. Hey, what? Like, I like you to be able to flow through these as you see fit. And I don't like to timestamp them. So we really just are talking about whatever's going on. But today it's Monday. Right? And as you went into preparing for your Monday, right, that may have looked like, holy crap, it's about to be Monday. Can we just do this weekend thing like all the time? Because I'm so here for just pumpkin farms and t-ball games, softball games, and football game. Like, can't we just weekend? Isn't that possible? No? Okay. So, considering we can't just weekend all the time, right? And eventually Monday's going to roll around and we're going to have to do this life thing. I know. What I want you to start thinking about is like, is that a misery moment for you? Is Monday in line with misery? And not just like, oh, once in a while, Monday, you're really dreading your to-do list this week. It's going to be hectic and crazy, and we got to do all these extra things. Plus, I have this strain at work. Like, not just that. Not just occasional instances. Are you waking up in misery every time your week starts? Like, really? And not just like, harrowing misery where it's like, oh no, no, no. Like, this is just generally you don't like the place that you're in or the work that you're doing. And how do you begin to even rescue yourself from that? Like, most of us are just feeling like we're stuck right here. And we're kind of just like, if I just get through it, honestly, probably closer to retirement than not. Let's just wait it out. And I want to challenge that thought today. I want you to start really thinking about what it is that you want to accomplish here or even in your workspace, because here's what starts to happen. As you start to just structure and ask for the things that you want, and it doesn't even have to be like, I'm perfectly fine. I'm not going to say it because I'm really not. I'm not okay with it. I was about to say I'm perfectly fine with you being miserable, but like having something to push you. No, I'm not okay with that. And you shouldn't be either. And I know that means that you're going to have to start taking steps forward that are super uncomfortable, that really like demand and structure and ask more of your environment. But here's what. You're never going to regret putting your foot out there. Now, you're going to fall, okay? You're going to want something that is probably a million steps away from where you are right now, okay? That's one of the things that I can promise is like that end goal, right? If you wrote it down and it made you nervous, probably something to stick with. If you're writing stuff down that you're just like, oh, cool, totes, we could do that. No, that's not enough. These aren't the kind of goals that are going to sustain long-term life. Like, write stuff down that makes you so super nervous that, like, you seriously dream about at night. And this is the number one step, and I would say that this is the one thing that people, I don't think, are as intentional about as they should be. And I'm talking to Kendra this week for our Empowering Women Wednesday interview this week. And we talked about this yesterday in the interview. It's like, it's all about intention, right? It's all about just saying what you want and then continuing to keep that focal point. Because a lot of people just, I think, kind of skate into this idea. And they aren't as specific about, because what it's going to be and how you're going to show up is going to change over time, right? Like today, my work and the way that I'm expressing myself in the things that I want to do is through podcasts. And in the future, it may be through book and podcast. It may be through who knows where we're going to go, right? And so that kind of the medium as to which you express is going to change over time. So like your job may change over time. The way that you express what you're passionate about will probably change. What I want you to keep focused on is what it is for you. What is that specific thing that lights you up? And if you don't know what that is, start exploring, because I think you probably do. I honestly think we all know, and I'm only judging this based off of my experience and my experience relating to other women who are similar to me in like wanting more but never really stepping out to do it. I think you know exactly what it is, exactly what would light you up. I think the fear factor comes with this. I know what it is, but I don't know that I could do that and be successful. Right? And this is where that like Monday mentality comes in, where you're like, well, I'm not really doing what lights me up. And so this is going to be miserable. And every day is probably going to be miserable. And if you're like me, welcome. if you're like me and the days are becoming more miserable as you continue to advance, and I know, right? I know. It's terrible. The days are becoming more miserable and it's becoming less fulfilling. What I want you to stay in tune to is this idea of what you're going after and what you want to be about and who you want to be. Because the second that you start writing that down and you start really thinking about that and you really put that focal point there, right? Like I started this podcast just knowing that I wanted to build something that helped people change their lives and let them know that they can actually live life on their terms. And so knowing that that was the work that I inevitably wanted to do started to put me on this trajectory path towards that. While I was still very much in the Monday misery of my life, I knew that I was taking steps forward. I knew that I wasn't going to build that overnight, whatever that would be, right? So for some of you, that looks like you're going to have to go back to school. For some of you, that looks like you're going to have to start, volunteering or putting yourself at the table, finding ways to get yourself a seat at that table. It's going to look different for everybody, but I think at the end of the day, you'll never regret signing what you find important and standing for it. Because if there's something that keeps speaking to you, like, hey, I really want to write a book. I hear that a lot. I really think if I could do anything, I would write a book. But we put that away. No, I could never write a book. You know what it is for you. I promise. You might be scared of it, but here's the thing. That thing would never come into your head, never, if you weren't capable. Sorry, just wouldn't. I'm not going to sit here and think that it wouldn't. It just wouldn't. That one thing, whatever it is for you, whatever you hear, right? And a lot of times we just run away from it. Like, I'm pretty sure if there's anything that I wouldn't do, it's that. When I started my idea of who I wanted to be and how I wanted to show up in this world, if I could do anything, and that's the hard part, is stripping back this idea that you can't do anything. Especially when you sit surrounded by people who are telling you it just really isn't possible for you. It's hard, right? It's hard to drown out that noise. It's really hard. If you're coming from a middle-class background like me, if you're coming from a very Midwest background, there's another layer. Right? There's all these layers of impossibility. So when you sit there and you think about these bigger things, these bigger callings, sometimes, all the time, you are a product of your environment. And so for me, that looked like kind of escaping and pretending that that environment no longer existed and creating a new environment, right? And sometimes that looked like a whole lot of loneliness because there wasn't anybody ready for that environment yet that was around me. But over time, we started to attract those people. Me. I started to attract those people and they started to gravitate towards me as I just started asking. Oh, hey, I really just like having friends. Do you want to be friends? Do you want to get jackets? Karina, I don't know how many times we need to go ahead and design those jackets, but let's go, right? And all of a sudden, you're living perfectly placed in this life. And the only thing that changed for me was that I had let go of this idea that I wasn't capable of building this life myself. I completely let that go. That I wasn't perfectly capable and gifted with the things that I would need or that I wouldn't be able to find them, I just let all of that go. And I let my dreams and the things that I wanted lead. Because you're not going to well, okay, you may be. But it's unlikely that you're going to dream things that you're not capable of. And it's very unlikely that you aren't capable of finding those things. 2 years ago, I would have said, well, I don't even know how to do a podcast. That's a really dumb goal, right? Hey, if you want to go ahead and bat 100, I would tell you to avoid that every time. But you don't start with starting a podcast. You start with pressing record. And then you start with figuring out how to do a podcast. And you know how the people that I know figured out how to do a podcast? They read books. They went to free webinars. People, you can find everything you need in free webinars. I'm telling you, you can find it. You're going to have to watch more than the average person, but the free info is out there. I promise you that. And then just keep going until you find what fits you. But stop dreaming smaller dreams because you can't see the end picture in sight. Dream the big, scary end picture and take the step that's right in front of you today. Right? What are you capable of doing today that could be your first step? Maybe it's just sending an email, right? If you're trying to advance in your job, maybe it doesn't look like, okay, tomorrow the perfect position comes open and you apply and boom, you get it. But maybe you take the first step and that looks like, right, getting yourself a little bit of a seat. Maybe that just looks like volunteering for that higher up level of work in your organization. Maybe that looks like just raising your hand at a meeting today, right? To start establishing your voice. Maybe that looks like just starting to put your energy into a new space. For me, my first step just looked like pressing record on a computer before I ever did anything. I recorded for 3 months. Now, I'm an extremist in habit forming, so not everybody's going to do that. That may not be what you need to show yourself that you could do this, but that's what I needed. And honestly, anytime that got stressful, I just backed away because it was going to suck my energy that I had to do this work. And I had to commit to just doing it first. And that's what it looked like for me. And for you, it's going to look different, but the same. I don't want you to be setting goals that you aren't afraid of accomplishing. But I also don't want you to look at what that end goal is and be like, I'm never going to get there. Take the step that's in front of you and see how it unfolds. You want to start escaping this Monday misery? The number one thing that you can do is start actually embracing the fact that your life is up to you. I'm going to say that again for the people in the back. Your life is completely up to you. And yes, we all have different things that have put us in different places in our lives. But at the end of the day, you are in control of you, right? And so the intention that you put behind your life, the intention that you put behind the things that you want to accomplish is what's going to take you there. But I think a lot of us are just kind of hanging out not much intention. Let's just make money and retire. Say it. Say those things. Take those steps. Do those things. Do you want to hunt, fish? Do you want to love your life? Do you want to empower groups of people? What is it for you? And get super specific. So other things will come as a result. They'll start unveiling themselves to you. But if you never stand up and say, I'm just tired of being miserable and I really want to say what my life looks like from here on out, you can expect the same misery that you see all around you. Start asking. Start demanding the things you want. You will not be disappointed by doing that. Now, there will be some disappointment along the way, but those are just lessons meant to continue guiding you on this path. As always, you're smart, you're strong, you're beautiful. What are you going to do? Change the world. Bye, party people.